Welcome to the show that looks at truth, fiction, and reality with a smirk. I'm Aaron Peterson.
I'm Amanda Sink.
I'm Zack Parkerson.
And thank you for listening to Smirk. This podcast is going to be a combination of creative storytelling and spirited discussion. First, we're going to hear a story from one of our authors. We don't know what the story is. We don't know what the context is. And then we're going to discuss afterward what we think the moral of the story is. And then we're going to discuss the topic a little more in depth. After it's all said and done, we'll find out whether or not that story was true. I can't wait to find out. That's actually my favorite part, is waiting to the end to find out. I'm just saying that some people will wait till the end.
I'm just going to lie to you every single week about whether it was true or not.
Just to keep it lively?
Just to keep the podcast exciting.
And then on the following week, you can let us know if you lied or not.
Yes, it's a new game I'm playing with myself.
So are you ready to tell your story?
I would love to tell my story. So everyone just gather around the campfire, and I'm going to tell you a story. I'm going to tell you the story of a man named Charles. Now, Charles is incredibly successful. I'm talking mansion successful. Royal mansion, guest houses, barns, 200 acres of lands, personal roads and ponds. And that's only one of about 14 or so properties. Needless to say, Charles is doing all right. In an almost unprecedented move, though, Charles has managed to maintain a view of what ground level humanity looks like, and is generally a pretty all right guy. But Charles has a father. Now, his dad is successful in his own right, also owning multiple properties, having plenty of income. Charles' father is retired, and despite retiring, he's still active, making money. Charles and his father don't speak. In fact, his father largely pretends Charles doesn't exist. You see, way back in the day, Charles' father helped him out with some seed money in exchange for stock in the company. A simple and clean deal. Now, to be fair, these are two men who never really got along in the first place. Introducing money to a dynamic like that was never going to end well. We introduce pride to the mix, things get even murkier, and Charles and his father are both prideful men. So eventually comes a day where money ruins everything. Charles calls his father up to talk about the stocks and what should happen to them. Charles' father always claimed the stock would return to Charles once he dies. But now Charles doesn't need or want the money from his stocks back, so he tells his dad to split it up, give it to the grandkids. This makes his father livid. How dare he tell him what to do with his money? His stocks? Charles' father says he'll sell the stock and split the money between the kids. Why? Just to make sure it's his way, not Charles'. It's the only explanation that even makes any kind of sense. Charles' father's money is what made all of this possible, so how dare his own son now not need him? Charles buys his father's stock to the tune of millions, just to keep the stock of the family, as he always wanted to do. His father accepted the money, because of course he did. But still, he refuses to speak to Charles, even as he marches ever closer to the Reaper's embrace.
Ouch.
Ooh.
Ouch.
What a solid closing line.
Thank you. I worked on it.
I like it.
It's like you wrote a story or something.
So, what do you two think the moral of the story is?
It sounds like you're trying to touch on the idea of greed, but also something to do with that father-son dynamic and kind of the control of that relationship. So I'm not sure. I feel like there's something deeper to it, though, that I'm missing. What do you think, Aaron?
I think he needs a hug. Like I just said, he needs some hugs.
Charles needs a hug.
Yeah, no, I think you did. You wrote it.
We'll give you a hug. Maybe it's a real story.
Yeah, it could be. Is this guy loaded? Because I'll be friends with him and I'll get some cash.
I'll take his investments.
You give him the hug his father never did.
What I gather from it is that even the power of love and selflessness is not going to overcome greed. From someone who is truly greedy, even that selfless act from his son is not going to overcome greed. So greed consumes. Greed consumes, it destroys. Greed is bad. Unlike Gordon Gekko, greed is bad. That's what I got.
So I think you guys pretty close. Maybe I'm a bad writer. Greed is obviously an element, but I was focusing in on pride. And the fact that Charles was trying to tell his dad what to do with his money, and money being both of the things that these men are so good at, that how dare one of them tell the other what to do with it.
So stubbornness, pride.
I perceived it as more of like a father-son control, but I can see where the power would play in that scenario.
Right.
Your writing was good. Don't worry.
I was using pride to illustrate that if you pride yourself on things, it can even impact a father-son dynamic before family.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely.
You know?
Yeah, it can corrupt as well. Pride is greed. So I'm going to connect these and make this work. So I was right. Because I'm proud.
Hey, I said the father-son dynamic and control. You just use this pride.
Hey, there's no wrong here.
We're all right.
Of the 7 deadly sins, I think that greed and pride can be seen as pretty interconnected.
Would you say that pride is one of the worst ones?
Yeah, probably. I mean, it's up there for me. Absolutely. In my personal life's view.
That's definitely the least fun. No, that's pretty interesting. It's a very good story. I thought that was very engaging and definitely your point was illustrated. I'm just obviously was not perceptive enough to get it.
Let's get into a little bit of discussion.
Ooh,
Yeah.
Are we going to talk about where you need a hug? Because I'm feeling that you need a hug.
What do you mean where he needs a hug?
Well, that he needs one.
So, could there ever be a reason to stop speaking with your child?
Ooh. That's tough. I'm a parent.
There could be reasons to stop talking to a family member. I don't necessarily...
Okay, well, I'm speaking specifically a child. Your own child.
That's a great question.
What
would it take?
I don't have a kid.
No, it's not tough.
Right, and that's what makes it interesting because one of you has a child and the other does not. So we're gonna get two different viewpoints out of you guys.
So in terms of while you're thinking, Amanda, because you seem like you're still pontificating upon this, I will tell you that if not talking ever, like just ceasing conversation completely,
yes,
it would take a lot, I think, for that to happen. Even there are moments where I could totally see myself giving up. If one of my kids like viciously murdered someone I found out they were a serial killer, I definitely would not be, hey, you know what? We're all good. It's all family.
You still coming to Thanksgiving dinner?
Yeah, no. There are lines or extremes, and I don't believe just because they're your child that you look past horrific things. But not speaking to them, man, they would have to. That would be tough. I tell you what, if I found out that they were sadistic and maybe killed a child or something, I don't know if I could get past that. Like, that's one of those things. If my child killed another child, I don't know if I could look at them again in the same way. So I might not speak to them basically to avoid my own not wanting to confront that fear, because all I would think about is I failed. As a parent, because that's, I guess, how I see it different, because I am a parent. You look at everything about, I tried to teach my kids what they needed to take care of themselves. And you do some right, some wrong, usually a lot right, a lot wrong. That's just how parenting goes. And when they do something that is very negative or is seen very negative by society or by yourself, the first thing you do is go, where did I go wrong? I mean, that's not really the parent's fault. Unless they become adults, it's not their fault. It's not my fault. But as a parent, I think that's just how you automatically feel, because you want to believe that you contributed to whatever life that they're going to have, and you gave them the gifts that they needed to succeed in that life, whatever life they choose. You want them to be happy, whatever life they choose. And if they choose to hurt someone and they do so in a very sadistic way or a vicious way, I don't know any way you can't point that finger inward to some degree as a parent. And I would find it hard to talk to my child after that. I don't know if I would cut them off completely, but it would be very, very difficult.
Yeah. It sounds very insightful coming from a parent.
Well, I'm not a parent. And
thank the Lord.
Hey, what's that supposed to mean?
I'm sorry. Sometimes I inner monologue outside.
And I think that if it came to something that was very severe, then yes, there's reasons to stop speaking to your child. Depends on what they're doing. If it's something that you just don't condone, but it's not harmful to anyone, by no means is that reason to stop speaking to your child or to ignore their existence. But if it's something that is detrimental, like you were saying, Aaron, if they murdered another child or if they sexually assaulted somebody or something severe enough that I wouldn't be able to stand them as a person if they weren't my child, I don't think that I would be able to continue that relationship, depending on the severity of what they did.
Now, do you think you would find yourself blaming inward?
Of course. I mean, I feel like everyone's a little bit, even when it comes to family members that aren't your parent or child, if it's siblings or if it's maybe nieces or nephews or just somebody that you have a close relationship with that you feel you've helped form or shape as an individual, especially as a parent, you're going to take a lot of responsibility on, even if you entirely shouldn't. I mean, there is some responsibility as a parent, but if someone is mentally unstable to the point where they're slaughtering human beings, that's not necessarily the parent's fault. They can't necessarily help that. If it's just their actions and the way they treat people, where they're rude and they're selfish, then that could be put back on the parents in some respect and on some level to blame, because those kids probably witnessed that same action while they were growing up. So I think it kind of depends on how...
You don't think they witnessed mom and dad slaughtering small families?
Hopefully not, but you never know. But I think that it would just really depend on what they did. But I would definitely probably blame partly myself, regardless of if I would be right or wrong in that respect. I think it's just human nature to try to take some blame on a human being that you've shaped and you've grown, and that's your kin. You're going to take some of that blame on yourself.
That was really well said, Amanda.
Thanks.
Hey, wait, does that mean I sucked?
No, she used
That's
a lot
for
of
your
big
comment.
words, strung them together.
Oh, those words. Damn. One after the other,
very
just like a
impressive.
sentence. What about you? How do you feel about it?
No matter what they do, I feel like I would still take their phone calls. Even if they're in prison for something heinous, they get those 30 minutes in prison to call somebody. I think I would pick up the phone, even if they did something monstrous, just because that's your genealogy. That's you and yours are out there. But I would still feel that no matter what they did, maybe they need help, maybe they need you. And no matter what they did, if they called me up, I would talk to them still. And it's going to be hard, and it's probably going to break you emotionally knowing that you're talking to, like, say, your child who sexually assaulted somebody, but that's your child. You got to give them all of you as long as you can.
Now, on the flip side of that, let me ask you guys to flip that before you go to your next discussion.
Well, I think maybe you shouldn't, because
Okay.
I'm going to flip the question, if that's what you're wondering.
You know what? I'm just going to stop talking.
Let him lead.
It's really good for a podcast when people stop talking.
What? Because if you're looking to flip it, my second question is actually, could there ever be a reason to stop speaking with your parent?
Well, all right. That got me. That's what I was going to say.
Yeah.
This is, I feel like, a much easier question.
I was wondering about that when I was drafting it. I feel like this is a much simpler question. Yes.
It is. And I don't know if it's just because I'm not a parent, so it's harder for me to put myself in the position of, would I be able to stop speaking to my child? If it were my niece or my nephew, who sometimes I consider to be like my kids, because one of them I helped, graze and row for some years,
Wait, graze and row? What does that mean? Where are all these words coming from?
She's raising cows.
I guess.
Raise.
Oh, I thought you said graze. I'm sorry.
No.
She did say graze.
I swear you said graze.
I'm
She said
tired.
graze. I was letting it go, though.
I might be.
I am smirking right now.
Roll credits.
I think it's harder for me to put myself in that position, but it's easier for me to put myself in a position that I could already understand a little bit easier, because I do have a parent, whereas I don't have a child. So for me, it would be along the same lines. And I think it depends on your relationship with your parents. Absolutely. So
It sure does.
if one of my parents decided to go out and murder somebody, I can tell you for sure I would probably still talk to my father. I would probably still deal with whatever nonsense he felt like talking about or needing to explain, if you can even really explain
Sorry,
that.
I killed that dude.
I think I would still have that discussion, because it's somebody that I've had that relationship with for my entire life. And so I think this is where my hypocrisy comes in, because maybe if I did have a kid and I did have that relationship developed, I would feel differently, where I can't let go of that relationship no matter what they've done. And so I think now that you've asked this question, now I'm thinking I should change my other answer. I don't think I would be able to just nix a relationship with my parents. entirely. Would there be some distancing depending on what they've done? Probably. The relationship, the dynamic would not be the same. I spend a lot of time with my family.
Wouldn't hang around them with cutlery.
You don't get to carve the turkey this year, sir.
Please sit down. You're wanted.
Yeah. It is interesting you guys go to like the heinous crimes because Charles' father, so I think you would agree, did not really have a reason to excise his own son from his life.
No, not at all.
Yeah.
No. It was just simple stubbornness.
Yes, definitely stubbornness.
And pride and arrogance, really. A little arrogance in there, too. In terms of parents, that's harder. I have a really, really, I mean, I'm close to my dad, but I'm much closer to my mom. I just am. And it's the same situation as it would be with my kids. I really believe that she would have to do something horrible, something so horrible that I can't fathom her doing it. Just like my kids, I can't fathom them doing anything like that. So it would have to get to that level where I can't believe you would do something like that. It would take something just drastic for that to happen. And the same token, it would be very, very hard for me to cut it off completely. And for either of my parents, really. It's just one of those things where they're still your family. So I don't think the question is any easier. I think the answer is exactly the same for me. I just feel like I don't know if I could do that. And it would take something horrible to even consider it. But I still think, kind of like Zach said, I'd probably take the call. I don't know if I'd go see them. I really don't know if I could go. I couldn't look at them because I'd feel it. Mm-hmm. I wouldn't feel as much guilt, though. If it's kids, I think I'd feel guilty.
Right.
Wouldn't feel guilty if it's my parents. More like stupid. Like, how did I know they were crazy this whole time? Like,
I knew it. I knew it
all this
along.
time I'm telling people, oh, my mom's so cool. And here she is stabbing people at the supermarket. That's not right.
Why is she stabbing people in the supermarket?
Oranges.
Give me those oranges.
Whatever it is, yeah.
Did you actually just say oranges too?
I did.
That was what was in my head.
You are welcome. We both want some oranges. Zach,
so oranges are worth killing over is what I'm learning from today's podcast.
You better watch out. Don't take my oranges.
Midwest in the winter, it's hard to get some oranges. So yeah.
Well, I mean, I think it's hard to get tuna too, but I don't think
Nobody's died over tuna.
You guys said Amanda, you said the question was so much easier, and it's interesting because I take an inverse approach because I think I could stop speaking to a parent, which is, could potentially be hypocritical. And it's interesting. I don't feel the same responsibility, I guess, towards talking to a parent who has slaughtered somebody over oranges than I would with a child. I can't speak to why that is really. I feel when I wrote the question, I immediately knew my own answer. Well, I did to the first one as well. And hearing your responses have been very interesting to me. It makes me think a little bit harder on my steadfast and quick response that I had in my head. Yeah, there's just something about a parent that I don't feel as obligated to them that I would a child to keep them around speaking in my life.
Wow. You do need a hug. And this story is totally about Zach hugs. Now, please tell me that's the title. I Need a Hug by Zach Parkerson.
Well, I don't want to spoil anything.
I think if it didn't include like close relatives, that would be easy. That's super easy for me.
Yeah, I can cut out some cousins, man.
Yeah.
Nobody cares about their great uncle.
Right. You can cut them out.
They're random stuff. I mean, hey, I only see you every July. All right.
July.
Family reunion. That's the only time I ever see your ass. So
it was in July.
I'm just assuming picnic time. That's what I'm going for.
4th of July. Again, Independence Day.
Midwest. Nobody's partying in December except Christmas stuff.
Yeah, your guys' responses, it's good. I like this because I'm thinking a little bit differently.
Is it altering your original opinion to hear ours at all?
I wouldn't say altered. Not quite so quickly.
Maybe almost kind of
feels like you
possibly
already had a plan and you're like, damn it, now that plan's not as easy as I thought it was. I'm going to think of a better plan.
I have complicated feelings about my parents like I think we all do. I haven't gotten to the point where I'm not going to talk to them yet.
Ooh, yet. Well played. All depends on how Christmas works out.
I like to keep them in fear. Yeah. If I don't get that new Nintendo Switch, they're gone.
Well
like
played.
Not even any games to go with it. I
just want to point out you're a grown ass man, and you just said, if I don't get my Nintendo Switch.
Priorities, man.
If I don't get my Lego Death Star set with over 3,000 pieces, forget about it.
The Millennium Falcon one that's at the Lego store right now in Chicago.
I don't.
It's insane. It's beautiful.
Moving right past that. Anyway, so last question. what do you think is more important, the family you're born with or the family you make along the way?
That's a tough question. See, I don't consider just blood your family. So I would say the family along the way. My best friend, Dennis, is my brother. I mean, he'll always be my brother. You know, in fact, I don't even know why I call him friend. He's my brother. I grew up with him, and he's family. He's blood. He's been there for me more than most people. So I would definitely consider him family, more so than I would people in my family. Now, you know, when it comes to kids, there's no separation for that for a parent because they're my kids. You know, outside of killing some small child for oranges, there's not much that they could do that would make me not love them or not cherish them. And they're just automatic family. But everybody else is kind of along the way. You know, I've got people that, like my really close friends like Tyler and Rob and Scott and Angela and people that I can name off the top of my head, I consider them family. It's a difficult question. I don't know why people get so hung up on the bloodline because I don't know what that really matters. If the people that have your bloodline aren't there for you, who cares? The people that matter should be the ones that are always there.
Yeah, I'm kind of in line with that. My thinking is just because we have the same genealogy does not mean that you are family to me. And just there are people that I have created such a close connection with, kind of like you said with your brother friend Dennis, where I've met them along the way, but they're my family. But I have blood family members that I wouldn't really consider family because I don't associate with them. It's almost like no matter which way you go, there has to be some sort of earning to that spot. Have you been around in my life? Have I been able to be there for you? Have you been able to be there for me? How much connection do we have? How close are we? And so those things kind of create that family for me. So my family isn't necessarily one or the other. It's kind of just a merging of the two, depending on the relationships that I've created. What about you, Zach?
Well, there's that old saying, blood is thicker than water, but the saying truly goes, the blood of the covenant is thicker than the water of the womb. I live by that. The people you meet along the way are the people that matter, and they can be your blood family, the people that matter to you, but I don't think because you're related, you're obligated to anybody. And I think a lot of the time, especially older people, like the patriarchs, the matriarchs of families always try to tell you that family is the most important thing. They'll always be there for you. But I find in my history, family tends to breed the most drama and weird petty arguments and resentments and truly heinous things. And I don't think that you're not inclined to call those people your family just because you were born into them.
So here's, if you don't mind me stacking on to your question. So at what point would you say that people cross that line from they're now my family? Cross that line into you're now my family?
You're now my family?
Mm-hmm. Like at what point do people, if bloodline, not bloodline, whatever, however they're related or not related to you, at what point do you consider them, you know what, they are now my family? What does it take? Is there like a certain thing they have to do? Is it just a certain bond, or is it just a moment where you realize they've been there way more times than someone else has been there? How do you determine it?
If they can hum the Overworld song from the Zelda series, immediately they're family.
Definitely not your family then.
That's an easy way to get in if you know it. And an easy way to stay out if you don't.
Yeah, there you go. If you can record yourself humming that and send it to Zack at smirkpodcast.com, you're going to be part of his family. Congratulations.
That's right. That's how easy it is. And I love my family. So I love you guys, the listeners.
Aw.
Sweet. No, seriously, serious question. Like,
no, I know. Yeah, no. And I made a little joke to try to buy some time to think about it. And
well planned.
It's tricky because it's just an emotional feeling. You just know it at some point. I guess when you know you can call upon them in a moment of crisis, even if it's something dumb, say it happened at work, and they'll talk to you about it and not, be that overly judgment or come from a plane of superiority or something, or actually converse with you. I think that goes a long way for me.
No, that's very astute. Mine would probably be, I think a lot of people will be busy when you need something. Mm-hmm. You find that a lot in life. People you think will be there for you aren't there because they're busy. They've got their own lives. And when you find people that, they're in the middle of something or they have something going on and you just reach out to them for help, whatever it is, fixing a car, whatever it is. I'm just going to keep throwing that as a reference every episode, apparently. Whatever you need help with, And even if they don't know what the hell it is, but they still want to help you, to me, that's when you kind of cross that line. You're like, you know what? This is more than just a friend. He's family. Whenever I see a selfless act, I consider that only family does that to me. Mm-hmm. Seems like Amanda's still pondering. She's like, I don't really like people, so.
I like some of them fine.
Wow.
You just got to work at it. But I think for me, I have to be able to trust you. And that means that I need to be able to trust you with my safety, with my, not necessarily secrets, because I'm not really a secretive person, but just the things that I need to talk about. Can I trust you with those? Or are you somebody who, and gossipy isn't really the word I'm going to, but judgmental, or are you taking what I'm telling you and gossiping with judgment to other people about it, that sort of thing? I'm not really into that. So I guess for me, it certainly has to be somebody that I can trust with my safety, with my communication, with my life. If I would trust somebody with my life, would you take care of me if something were to happen to me? I mean, think about if you were sick or you were stuck in a hospital. Who's going to come visit you? Who's going to check on you? That's the people I'm going to consider family. And that's a lot of the time not going to be your blood relatives. That's going to be some of your friends and maybe some of your family. If you're in a car accident, who's going to call you to make sure you're okay? Who's going to say, hey, do you need a ride anywhere? I know that you're dealing with everything. What's going on there? What can I help you with? Who's going to just periodically check up on you and see how you're doing? And am I doing the same thing with them? Because if I consider them family, I'm doing all of those things to them. I'm checking up on them. I'm always offering. I do that a lot for people that aren't my family. I probably shouldn't because I do it for strangers too. But I feel like those are kind of some of the requirements, I guess, if you will.
That last one's a big one for me. If I care about somebody and I ask them how they're doing, but they never ask how I'm doing, to hell with you. I don't need that. Give me a little something. That to me says you're not family because you obviously don't have any concern whatsoever about my livelihood.
Yeah,
and I'm constantly asking about yours.
I feel like there has to be a lot of reciprocity in terms of like the care and concern for one another. And if that's not established, if you don't have that established relationship, then you can't really be family. And I'm sure all of us have relatives that are by blood, but never check to see what you're doing, don't even know where you work, you know what I mean? Or don't know what you're doing with your life or anything, and don't seem to care to check up on it. And there's relatives that you have that you don't really care to check up on either, because they're not who you consider family. It's kind of, to me, and I hate to use the word, it's like an earning, but you kind of earn each other's spot as a family member based on your relationship and how you communicate and how you deal with problematic situations. I feel like that's the biggest thing is if someone's going through some sort of a crisis or maybe even just an emotional breakdown, who's the person you're going to turn to? Or who's somebody you can trust going to with that information or helping you deal with something? And it might not always be that you want to rely on somebody else, and that's fine. But who are the people that you would, if you were obligated to, who would you turn to? Or who would you expect to turn to you and you would never shy away from that conversation? If you were in the middle of something and you got a phone call and it was a message and said, hey, I need to talk to you right now, something's not right. Who are the people you're going to leave the table for to answer that phone call? Those are your family.
Right on.
This really fostered a pretty good discussion.
The only thing we didn't talk about was pride.
Yeah, no, I was about to say, you know what, guys? I think obviously, I wrote a certain moral, but I guess I wanted to talk about something else. So
yeah, Zack needs hugs.
Yeah, how about instead of pride is petty, the moral is family is fragile.
Ah, I like that.
Is that the name of the story?
No, the name of the story was Fragility. So,
catchy, it's a big word.
So it
it's a big word.
So it actually kind of all plays together. I think I learned about the both of you.
Is your story truth or fiction?
The story was true.
It was true. That story is true?
Who do you know that has 14 different locations with mansions?
It is true. Obviously I can't tell you because we're here to protect the innocent. But let's just say I entered into a family recently, and I've met some of them, and yes, they're doing okay, but it turns out even rich people have some messy family drama.
Interesting.
Everybody.
See? Didn't I say that it might even be a real story?
Boom. Now you need a hug.
I might.
Boom.
Yeah. You seem so proud of yourself.
Look, I don't catch mysteries that often early
It wasn't
on.
Clue.
This kind of is like a game of Clue. Are you figuring it out in the beginning or not?
That's interesting. Okay, so
Interesting.
it's very interesting.
Okay, Dracula.
Well, we've been Smirk. No.
We don't need Dracula or Sly Stallone here.
No, we don't. Each week, if we get them, we will choose a listener story to briefly read and discuss on the show. Now, obviously, we just started Smirk. But if you have a short story and you want to send it to us, send those thoughts to mystory@smirkpodcast.com. That's mystory@smirkpodcast.com. And once we start getting them, obviously, we will pick one to read on the show and try to either decipher the moral of your story and discuss it that way, or if you want to tell us, and we'll talk about what your intended moral was. So I think that could be fun once we start getting those. Guys, this is the end of this episode of Smirk.
Not to toot our own horn, but I think the setting up of a brief story to try to get to a talking point and having follow-up questions is a tremendous. I like it a lot.
Well, I got to work on the making it short part, but because my stories are a little lengthier.
We can lengthen ours and you can shorten yours and we'll meet in the middle.
See, it's like the hugs episode. That's what we should call
tons
it.
of hugs.
Hugs for you. You get a hug and you get a hug and you get a hug.
We're going to Oprah this.
Oh,
Yep.
I'm off.
That's what. Remember, you can join our Facebook group. Just find Smirk on Facebook, as well as Twitter @Smirk Podcast. You can find other episodes at smirkpodcast.com, or you can subscribe on whatever podcast app you use, whether it be Apple Podcasts, Google Play, whatever it is. Please be sure to subscribe, because that's how you know when the next episode is out. And as you write your own life story, always remember to tell it with a smirk.
Smirk.
What the hell was that?
I don't know.